Welcome to the Fish North Georgia podcast, where we talk everything fishing here in North Georgia.
Make a cast over that brush pile and bring wolf packs of spotted bass up.
Georgia is blessed with so many of these electric-only lakes.
No, I didn't say that, Danny. Don't be
so,
speculating now.
All right, for our listeners out there, I am sitting here today with Mr. Jim Farmer. How you doing, sir?
I am doing good.
I'm glad you and your boss, if you want to go ahead and introduce your boss so we can get out of the way.
Well, tonight I brought my lovely wife Lisa with me. She's going to be watching over things and making sure I don't get out of control here.
Well, and that's fine. And you know, he says that the reason she's here is because it's raining really hard and he can't see well at night. But she's basically here to keep tabs on you, right? Make sure you stay out of trouble.
And if you notice, she's got that purse over there. She's got a tranquilizer gun in there. And if things get out of hand, what she'll do is she'll take it out and shoot me with it, and that'll be the end of that.
That's fine. As long as she shoots you and not me, I don't care, dude. You shoot him first, and just give me time to run. Give me 3 steps, right?
Is there a window back there?
No, it's all metal. That door is the only thing separating us and freedom right now, my friend. If she's got that, but
You got a problem because she's between you and the door.
I know it. Listen, and I'm fat and probably slower than you are, so. But thanks for allowing him to come play. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say that. But I appreciate you both doing this. You want to kind of give everybody just a little bit of who you are real quick?
Sure. Yeah, well, for those who don't know who I am, I'm Jim Farmer, and I've been in the Atlanta area since 1997, and I've been addicted to fishing since probably 1960, 1965, something like that. So it's been something that's been an addiction. I've never been able to kick it, and so I just went with it for the last 60 years. So
I love interviewing you old guys like that. Y'all talk about fishing in the 60s and all that. I'm like, I ain't even been born yet. So like that.
Oh, really?
No, I'm still young. I've been rode hard, but I am young, so I don't look it. But I'm going to throw you an easy question, though, first. Mm-hmm. Just kind of juice you up.
Okay.
Is Harmon as bad of a pool player as he let on in his podcast?
I don't think that you know the half of it.
That's what I want to know. I figured there's more to the story.
It's ugly. It's pretty ugly.
Go ahead.
But, you know, I've been shooting pool my whole life. Ever since I was a little kid. I learned how to play pool when I was probably about 8 years old. But I've been suckered before by the likes of Jim Harmons of the world. And,
right.
you know, when he told me that he was, I think it was a YMCA champion from 80 to 84.
Yeah, don't say 80 to 83 because he gets mad if you leave off 84. Yeah, because he was player of the year that year from what he said. Yeah, so, yeah, absolutely.
He was. So, you know, I kind of listened to that, and I went along with it, but I already knew because I've heard those stories before. So, but he is bad.
Is he bad? Did he come in like a gunslinger?
He did.
Did he?
Yeah.
I would like to have had that on video.
Well, see, he was just one part of the equation. Jimbo, one night, Jimbo was there too.
Right.
And so LJ, the deal was LJ came in right away, you know, talking like he was the big champion and all that. Well, see, Jimbo, he came over too, and he just acted like he was a regular pool player. So that went on for a couple games, and then Jimbo, he said, Jim, I want to show you something. So he took me back into one of our back rooms in our basement there where the pool table is, and he said, I want to show you something. And he pulled out a pool cue case, and he had brought his pool cue, and he had been kind of, well, how would you say that, kind of sandbagging me on the pool table.
I got you.
So he breaks out this high-dollar pool cue that he had brought and hid back to the side. So then we got to see Jimbo's A game after that. But LJ, by that time, he was past history.
So you're good. Jimbo's good, Harmon's not. Let's just straight up
exactly, yeah.
I just want to get that out there, you know. I don't care what they say at the YMCA, you know, whatever that is, you know. I wonder if he's got a plaque or something like that. But anyway, I thought that was a funny story he pulled out. I'm like,
it was.
You know, you say that and then you just get whipped. You just get whipped. So, but I'm glad to know that Jimbo, he's legit. So if I ever play him, he's going to take my money.
I don't know that he'll take your money. He didn't take mine.
So that means he's just more legit. So he's not that legit.
He's good.
Okay.
He's good.
All right. Well, we just want to make sure we covered that
Yeah.
For all the pool players in the world. Now, you talk about growing up in rural Kansas. Mm-hmm. All right. So tell us a little bit about, what it's like to grow up in Kansas, number one. And I'm sure that's back in the Dust Bowl days if you're as old as you're saying you are.
Yeah, well, I can go back as far as about 66, and that would have I was born in 60. And we lived on a little farm on the in southeast Kansas on the edge of town, just past the edge of town. And we had cattle, we had pigs, we had chickens. We raised cattle. My dad was a butcher, and he owned half a grocery store in town. He was the half owner, and he was a butcher too. So basically, we raised cattle and we killed what we needed to eat. Same with the pigs. We always had pigs. We always had chickens. And one thing we did too was we raised bird dogs, Brittany Spaniels, and we used those for hunting and things like that. And we sold a few too. But it was pretty much, this rural farm life, just like you would have anywhere across the United States. But the good part about it was, like I was saying, I was addicted to fishing.
Right.
And I knew that from an early age. And within walking distance of our farmhouse, we had about 3 good fishing farm ponds, and I could go to them just about any time I wanted. So did a lot of fishing that way. And of course, back in the 60s and 70s, we had bicycles, and I was able to ride to local ponds and fish that way. So
I think that's something that's actually an important thing because I grew up in the 80s, but still we had that ability. There was a farm pond everywhere.
Yeah.
And you could go to it and they would actually let you fish.
Sure.
And that's a lost thing these days because if the pond's still there, there's a subdivision around it.
Exactly.
So that's something kids today just absolutely know nothing about.
Not like it was back then, no. It was a lot different as far as tackle was concerned. For me, tackle was no more than, and I've said this quite a few times, a coffee can full of worms,
Right.
a sod worm or something like that we dug up. Or we might even go out, we might catch a bunch of grasshoppers and use those for bait. But, now you've got, things are a lot different,
Oh, just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think it was in Jimbo's podcast that we talked about, there used to be a bait store on every corner, at least in Forsyth County, and even back in the day. You go get minnows, or you go get your worms if you didn't dig them up yourself. And now there's
hardly any.
You have Hammonds, around here, and it's kind of sad that part of American culture is gone now.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's. You had a lot more of that, and like the kids growing up these days, they don't get to experience that little, these little ma and pa type bait shops around like you used to. But
it is.
I really enjoyed growing up in the Midwest, and luckily my family, my dad and my mom, they were fishermen. My dad was an outdoorsman; he fished and hunted a lot. But my grandparents, they knew that I loved to fish, and they would take me fishing too. So I had, all these people around me growing up that understood that I was addicted to fishing.
And so they just fed into it.
They did. They used to take me. I had, like my granddad on my mother's side, he was a retired Army. He had spent about 30-some years in the Army and been through a couple of wars, and he retired. And I spent a lot of time with him. And that's where I learned to play pool, by the way, was my granddad.
Okay.
3 times a week, he'd go to the pool hall up there, and him and his buddies would play, I think they played dominoes, some game with dominoes, and they had a couple pool tables in the back. And he would babysit me when I was small. And so while they played dominoes, he'd turn me loose on the pool tables in the back. And I started playing pool when I was about 8, and I just kept doing it. So
Just hustled.
Yeah, that was one thing it was.
Yeah.
But that was one thing my granddad did teach me. But he had a lot of friends that had farm ponds out in our area. And him being an old veteran, an old war guy, why he could just about get access to any farm pond he wanted to. So I was privy to go fishing with him. And he's the one that taught me to bass fish, too. My dad was really good at bottom type, catfish and stuff like that. But my granddad, he liked the bass and the crappie, so I learned to kind of bass fish back in the 70s from my granddad on my mother's side.
That's awesome. I noticed you said, you fish mainly for consumption, which
did.
again is a totally kind of foreign thing these days. Not a lot of people fish for food anymore.
No, including me. I don't do it for food, but when I grew up, it was... it was a sign of the times back in the 60s and the 70s when people fished and when people hunted. they did it to eat. They just didn't do it for
Right.
sport. And we had a big old deep freeze out on our back porch, and it was a big deep freeze, and that thing was full. It was full of, the fish that we would catch, the meat that we would hunt. We were big bird hunters, so we always had a lot of birds, a lot of fish in there. So, it was something that helped us, supplement our food supply. So
Now, is the deer hunting in Kansas now the same as it was then? Okay, I'm sure it's got to be like everything else. It has totally changed. So
It has.
What was it like then?
it was non-existent, to be honest with you. Back in the late '60s and early '70s, there wasn't a lot of deer in Kansas, and we weren't big deer hunters back then. So I probably couldn't give you a real specific reason why there wasn't a good population of deer. I just know there wasn't very many, and that was coming from somebody that we would bird hunt or duck hunt, and we hunted a lot of land around, and we just never hardly saw. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've saw a buck.
Really?
Yeah, there was just a really, really small population compared to now.
Yeah, it's totally different now, I would
It
say.
is, yeah.
Kansas is a destination
It is.
for a lot of people to go deer hunting, which is, you're saying at one point it was non-existent. And
It was, it was, and that's one of the reasons we didn't deer hunt is because they wasn't plentiful. I mean, if they were, we probably would have and filled that freezer with them.
right, because you needed it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's unreal to think how things have changed.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch on TV. There's so many hunting shows, outdoor shows, hunting shows that come from Kansas and their whitetail population.
And you're like, I don't even know how them deer got there.
I know. A lot of stuff that I see on these TV shows, it's like, that's where I used to kick around, and now there's big old white.
I know. And somebody's making a killing letting somebody from another state come in and hunt it right now.
Exactly.
So it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, so you growing up, and at some point you're deciding, I assume, right out of high school or to join the Navy. Mm-hmm. Now, what made you think about doing that?
Well, I like to tell everybody the reason why I joined the Navy at the time was because the Navy had boats and they had a lot to do with water, and I had this fishing addiction, so it was only natural.
Right.
I thought, they got boats and water. That's half of it right there.
Right.
All I got to do is find the fish. But no, to be honest with you, I wish I could. That was the reason. But really, the reason was I was in construction and out of high school, and I was working down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the oil boom had been going on, but the oil boom was dying out in, say, the late 70s, and we were losing construction jobs. There just wasn't that much construction anymore, and I started asking myself, do I really want to stay in Oklahoma, Kansas, the Midwest, and just drive nails for the rest of my life? Is this what I was destined to do?
Right.
And, I did a lot of soul searching and just decided I want to do something different. So I just decided one day to join the Navy. And
Now, were you a lifer? Or you
yeah, I
retired?
guess you could call me a lifer.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So that's a pretty big decision.
It was, yeah. But, here's the thing is I'm coming out of a farm in Kansas. I started working when I was about 6, 7, 8 years, when I was old enough to carry a bucket. Anybody that works on a farm knows that that's not easy work. That's hard work, and it's 365 days a year. It never ends. Those cows got to be fed every day, every night. And that's a lot of hard work, and I'm thinking, there's got to be something easy.
Got to be a better way.
Yeah, so, when I joined the Navy, I realized it was either do this or I could go back and work in Kansas. And once I got in the Navy, I kind of enjoyed it and just stuck with it. So.
Well, first of all, we appreciate your service.
You bet.
And I don't think we tell people that enough, especially, my generation and younger. We don't appreciate, the armed forces like we should. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
How about the story behind everything is what really interests us. So how about when you're in the Navy, we're going to get to the fishing, but maybe some of the places that you went to, things you've seen that the average person hasn't seen just from being in the Navy, because I know it's there.
Oh yeah, overseas. I didn't travel a whole bunch overseas. Just the nature of what I did and my job required me to be in the United
Okay, and
States.
what was that? What was that?
I started out as just an aviation electrician. After I joined the Navy and went to boot camp, I went to school in Memphis for about 6, 8 months to learn how to be an electrician on aircraft, Navy aircraft, fighter aircraft, and attack aircraft. But I went to school and I got out of school and then went to my first squadron out in California and just kind of started from there. But as my Navy career progressed, I got more involved with a lot of other things in the Navy besides just being an electrician. I just to throw out a couple things that I did. I was a physical fitness coordinator for the Navy in our squadron, and that we had a physical fitness program. Everybody had to kind of keep in shape, and I was in charge of trying to keep everybody in shape.
Is it harder? Well, let me rephrase that question. Were the requirements for physical fitness harder back then or now?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure back then it was harder. They've kind of slacked up a little bit, eased up on those requirements.
So you're one of them hardcore guys back in the day.
I was, yeah, back then. It was pretty tough. I mean, it was, we had to test every 6 months and we had to be within a certain body fat. And we had to do X amount of push-ups, set-ups, and run in a certain amount of time. And so, it was hard. Nowadays, I think that you can get waivers for certain things.
Right,
and,
yes.
If you can't run fast enough now, maybe we'll try it later.
That's where I was going with it, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to set the stage for what it was like when you were there.
It was pretty tough when I was there, but I mean, yeah, you kind of got to understand too the nature of what our job was. We worked on an aircraft carrier a lot, and we worked on a flight deck, and that's a 12-hour day of being on your feet running around the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. And I'm telling you, you got to be in good shape for that. And this is day after day after day after day. It never ends. So
Right.
you have to be in good shape. And if you're not, that'll make you in good shape. But one way or another, you got to be in
One
good
way
shape.
or another, you're going to do that. Okay, so you were the fitness coordinator.
Yeah.
And how about something else?
Probably the biggest job I had in the Navy was, and the hardest job was, and these are all secondary jobs. I was always an electrician, but I was a drug and alcohol program advisor for the Navy. And basically what I did was if we had guys or girls or whoever in the squadron that had a problem, alcohol, I would determine what kind of problem they had. Was it a serious problem? Was it a small problem? And we would figure out a level of treatment if they needed treatment. And so I would kind of analyze that person. I would interview that person, find out what he did or this and that. But anyway, I would give recommendations to the Navy on what they should do with this person and if they got in trouble. And also I provided training I was an instructor, and so I provided training to our squadron as far as alcohol and drugs went. So, the guys kind of knew, don't do this, and don't do that, and this and that. So I was involved with that. That was a huge job. It was really a tough job too, because you'd get some guys that get in trouble, and they might be a good guy and a good worker, but they've just got problems that they can't sort out, and so we might have to do something as far as either treating them or get rid of them.
Now, did you recommend the treatment, or you just said they need it?
No, there was different levels of treatment. Let's say if you were, you had an alcohol-related incident, and you came to talk to me, and you and I would sit here just like you and I are sitting here talking, and I'd kind of get in your head, and I'd try and figure out, is this just something that's an isolated incident? Has this guy got, a history? Has he got a problem with this, And there's different levels. The level 1 treatment is just kind of an in-house, kind of a week's worth of talking to the guy and giving him alternatives rather than drinking to, have fun. And a level 2 treatment is kind of a 2 to 3 week in-house, and that's just to kind of realign you and kind of, talk to you and really have a lot of people around you to kind of get you in the right direction. And then the level 3 is like a person that's dependent on alcohol. And I would have to determine which level that was. And then we'd make a recommendation on whether this person was worth keeping, with, if he went to a treatment facility, would he be worth keeping? Should we treat him and release him, let him go home? Should we just let him go home? But, there was just different decisions we had to make.
In your experience, military versus civilian with this same problem, very similar, more in the military, less in the military, as far as alcohol-related situations?
I think it was more in the military, just by the nature of what we did. And
right. They were coping, just stress, a lot of it, you think?
Yeah, there was a lot of stress. You've got young guys that get thrown out into a very scary situation, and sometimes they can, go down the wrong path. They can start drinking and to try and cope with things. Because, I tell a lot of people, alcohol, the use of alcohol sometimes is just a treatment of a bigger problem. People try and self-medicate with alcohol, but they're really trying to treat something that's different, some problem that they may have, some personal problem, and they just kind of turn to alcohol to forget about it. So, I tell a lot of people, I never saw a lot of people that were addicted to alcohol because of the taste. They were addicted to alcohol because of the effect. And sometimes that effect was, covering up or just trying to dull or just get rid of a problem that just keeps popping up with them. So sometimes, you have to talk to a person to figure out it's not the alcohol that's a problem. They're dealing with another problem, So sometimes you got to kind of figure that out.
Yeah,
so.
And that's good stuff, because it doesn't matter if we're talking fishing, if we're talking business, whatever. I mean, that's real life stuff.
It is, yeah.
And that's something that probably affects everybody in some way, shape, form, or fashion, be it through family or even personal experience that may listen to this. Somebody knows somebody that, are going through that. So would you use the same, I guess, treatment, is not the thing, but the same path or the way you would talk to somebody then still today? I mean, if you come across that, so I mean, it hasn't changed.
No, and they said the Navy sent me to a lot of schools to understand all this stuff and make the decisions that I made. So I had a pretty good grasp from what the Navy taught me. But going back to my granddad on my mother's side, he was a severe alcoholic. I mean, he had been through 2 wars, and the guy, severe alcoholics, they get up in the morning drinking. His breakfast was a Natty Light or something like that, and that continued on until about noon or 1 o'clock. And then after my grandmother would leave, then he'd go get the hard stuff, and he'd start on that. But, that's a severe alcoholic. But I kind of had that too, because that's the way my granddad was, and that's the way I grew up with him. So I kind of had a little bit of background in that too.
Right.
That helped me out.
So that was something that was very ingrained in you, very personal. And when you were approached by the Navy to do that, it was almost like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. Or was you kind of hesitant?
No, I kind of wanted to do it. Number one, it helped people. Number two, I was able to identify with that kind of stuff. So I felt like, what I did was worth something to the Navy just because I had experience in it. So, yeah.
This is not a question that I even thought about asking tonight, but given what you've just told me, if somebody out there is listening to this and maybe they have a problem, any advice or suggestion that maybe just you've seen that can kind of guide them in a little way to, maybe call somebody or to talk to somebody?
Yeah. And I've seen successful stories from this. I've seen the worst people with the worst problems in the world that think that they've hit rock bottom, and then I'd run into them 3 or 4 years later, and they'd be perfectly happy and perfectly fine. So, sometimes, and I had a conversation with Lisa about this yesterday, sometimes we hit rock bottom and we felt like there's nowhere to turn. But to be honest with you, there's places you can go, there's places you can turn, and things are going to get better. I've seen so many success stories, so many people that thought that this was it, this was the end or whatever, and they've dug themselves out of the hole. They've pulled themselves up. So, the best thing I can say is if somebody's, if you suspect somebody having an alcohol problem or something like that, they may, a lot of times they're trying to self-medicate. They're trying to treat something else that's a problem.
Right.
So that's something to really look at, for a person that's drinking. But the biggest thing I can say is I've seen a lot of people that's been in a lot of bad places, and trust me, I mean, I was in the Navy in some of the worst worst stuff that you could possibly see, but I've seen time after time again people, that become successful people in society after that. So don't give up.
Right. Well, that's good. And like I said, I totally didn't expect to talk about that. and somebody listening is like, okay, all right, guys, let's get to the fishing. But that's real life stuff that, I think
It
supersedes it. Fishing is something we do for fun. And maybe some people medicate themselves fishing, to keep busy and stuff like that. But
Believe me.
I know.
There's been a couple of alcoholics that did turn to fishing instead of alcohol. So,
But still, that's a very important thing. And we're trying to build a community. And sometimes you got to help your brother, a little bit like that. So I'm glad I'm glad we were able to talk about that and that you brought that up. So now I'm sure that's not the end all of what you did in the Navy. So let's continue.
Another one that I did that was kind of interesting was I was a urinalysis coordinator, so I had to collect pee.
You were the pee test guy.
I was. I collected, I counted it, I looked at it, I sealed it, and did all that stuff. That wasn't a very fun job, but it was something that we had to do, I mean.
Now, how do you get that job? Somebody come up, listen, we got an opening. We think you might be the guy for it.
Now, the way you get all these jobs really is you have to put your best foot forward and ask for it. I mean, you have to want it.
Okay.
But see, in the military, whether it's the Navy, Army, it doesn't matter. The more things that you do, the more responsibility you put on yourself, the more hats that you wear, the more chance you've got of getting advanced. So it was part of advancement too.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I wanted to do all these things for a lot of different reasons, not just for advancement. I mean, I had my own personal reasons for doing them. But a lot of times, the more we took on, the more chance we had for advancement. So that's the reason I did a lot of this stuff.
I got you.
Yeah.
So let's talk fishing in the Navy. What fishing opportunities presented themselves in the various places you were stationed?
Oh gosh, I was mainly in fighter squadrons in the Navy, and in a squadron and just about anything in the Navy, it's always planned ahead of time. We always had a budget. Our budget was planned ahead of time. So a lot of things and a lot of traveling that we do, we were always, we would plan it a year ahead. So I always kind of had an idea where we were going to go for the next year.
Right.
And I could plan my fishing trips that way. And I'll be honest with you, the Navy was like my fishing Uber. I mean, that's the way.
Just a ride there to the lake, right?
Exactly. I had to do that 5-day-a-week job, but then it came to the good stuff.
Right.
But now, so I kind of, if you had a squadron that had 80 guys in it, you'd have about 6, 8, 10 of them that were fishermen,
right.
And you'd have maybe 2 or 3 that were hardcore fishermen. So I was in, say, 5 different squadrons, and in every squadron I was in, we always had a group of guys that were hardcore fishermen like me. So what we would do was when we saw that we were going somewhere, let's say that we were going to the desert. Let's say that we were going out to Nevada for a couple weeks. For us, we would go there a lot. We did a lot of desert training. For us, we would start thinking about going to the mountains on the weekend and going fishing, trout fishing up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, like around Tahoe or something like that.
And how was that?
That was
not a lot of us get to do that. So how was the fishing then?
Oh, it was really good. Now, see, I was stationed in Central California, outside of Fresno, in the San Joaquin Valley. So the Sierra Nevada mountains, we could see them. I could see them from my house. They were only about an hour away. Yosemite, Kings Canyon, and all that stuff. And you start going up in the Sierras, and there's just trout fishing up there that's unbelievable. Brown trout, rainbow trout.
Now, were you a fly guy or were you spinning?
No, I did. Later on I did, but back then it was mainly just, conventional tackle. But we did a lot of trout fishing when we go to, let's say we went to the desert, out in the desert. We usually went to this place called Fallon, Nevada, that was in a desert valley, and it was about 45 minutes or an hour outside of Lake Tahoe. If you were going towards the California border, you'd go up towards, we all heard of Donner Pass, and we know about that.
Yes, the Donner Party and all that, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I fished really close to the Donner Pass. The Truckee River is right there, and that was my favorite place to fish, was around the Truckee River, and there's a lot of streams and mountain lakes and stuff in those areas. But that's kind of where I cut my teeth as far as mountain trout fishing going. And I did in the seminar, the Geminar that we're doing, or we did, or we're doing,
Right.
depending.
For those of you that do not know, Jim is one of the 3 gyms in the Geminar, which is now an annual event.
Exactly.
With Jim Farmer here, with Jim Harmon, who was podcast before this. Now I have to get the numbers. I can't keep up with them. Mm-hmm. And Jim Mathley, also known as Jimbo on there. So for those that do not know, these 3 guys get together and put on a great Geminar/seminar. And by the time this one airs, we will have already had this one. It's actually coming up in a couple of days for 2020.
Yeah.
So is it a long-term plan, though, 2021?
We talked about that today, and we don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Yeah, we usually don't figure that out till like the day after.
I got you. Okay. So anyway, back. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay, but yeah, I talked. I'm going to talk about this at the seminar. Just a little story about it, but and we'll talk about more of my Navy fishing and travels. But I did tell a little story about. People ask me in the seminar, this is something I'm going to bring up, is people ask me about my Navy career and fishing and all that stuff. And, people ask me, is there anything that stands out? Is there like a big fish or something like that? Or is fishing trip or something that really stands out? And I like to tell people, I've caught a lot of fish and I've had a lot of memories. I mean, I've caught big fish, I've caught small fish, I've caught exotic fish, I've caught them everywhere. And I have a lot of memories of that, but there's one fish. There's one fish that stands out.
All right, let's hear about it.
And it's a brown trout, and that brown trout weighed about 8 or 10 pounds. And we were up in the mountains. We had went up to, me and probably about 4 other guys had went out to the mountains. We'd left, we had the weekend off from out in the desert, and we went up in the mountains, and we found a couple of mountain lakes way up there in the mountains, up around Donner Pass and the Truckee River and up there. And there was a stream that connected 2 mountain lakes together. And we were going to camp on that stream. We were going to camp right on that stream. And so we had walked up to the stream and we found where we were going to camp and everything. And on the way walking up the stream, well, all of us had walked by this little spillway, and these were 2 mountain lakes, and in between them, this stream connected the 2, but right in the middle, there was a little spillway. Now, the stream itself was only about 30 yards, 40 yards across, and they had this spillway where it dropped down about 3 feet on it. And the spillway is actually a concrete wall, and it just flowed over the wall. So I saw that, and I knew that with that waterfall there, that waterfall would dig out a big hole there.
Right. Just erosion in and of itself. Yeah.
So big holes to me as a trout fish, that means big fish.
Right.
So I saw that. Now my buddies, they're not quite as quick as I am with the fishing stuff. They like to fish, but they don't think like I think. And I'm thinking, when I get up in the morning early, I'm going to get up before everybody else, and I'm going to make my way down to that spillway and see if I can catch a big fish before anybody else gets up and comes down there. So I did. In the morning, I got up really early. The sun was just coming up. We're talking about the mountains in July, and it's cool up there, and the sun's just coming over the trees.
So you're setting the stage right here, yeah.
Yeah, so I get up and I get dressed, and everything's quiet. Everybody's still asleep in their tents, and I grab my rod, and my buddy had told me, he said, grab a rooster tail out of my tackle box there, and you can use that. So I grabbed a rooster tail out of there, and I headed on down to the little spillway there, and I got there, and I was able to walk out on the concrete a little bit and get really close to the water. And then down below was where the water kind of spilled out, but I had tied on that rooster tail. And it was an older rooster tail. It was a little rusty, so I wanted to see if the blade would still spin around okay, because it had rust on it. So I kind of cleaned it up as best I could, and I dropped it down. And when I dropped it down into the water, it was just, the water was like 3-4 feet below me there. And the water was probably about 8 or 10 feet deep down there. And it was really clear, and it was right beside the waterfall. And I put that rooster tail, dropped it down into the water, and I started running it back and forth right by the waterfall.
Just checking it.
Just checking it.
Right.
So I'm watching it spinning good. And all of a sudden, out of the waterfall, catch out of the corner of my right eye, I see something moving out of the waterfall. And it's this big brown trout. And this guy's a big old hook jaw that weighs probably 8 or 10 pounds. And he comes meandering out of that waterfall and comes right up to that rooster tail. And this all happened in just a couple seconds. And before I could even react, I mean, I was in shock.
Right.
It was surreal is what it was. And before I could react, that big trout grabbed that rooster tail and swam straight down with it. And when he did, my rod doubled completely over. I mean, doubled completely over. And this trout was pulling hard. And the first thing I thought is, something's going to give here. Something's got to give. But I'll tell you something that I did. When I tied that rooster tail on, I bit off the tag end. And when I bit it off real close to the knot. And I made the decision that that would probably be fine. And I went with it like that. Well, when that big brown trout grabbed that rooster tail and went straight down with it, I didn't have my drag set on my reel either. And I had a knot that had too short of a tag end on it. And those two things right there was what caused the problem, because all of a sudden that rod went from being doubled over twice to me thinking it was going to break to it popped straight back up. And here's the worst part about it is I realized what had happened. It popped up. Somehow the fish broke the line or something, and I was looking down at that trout, and he was down on the bottom, and its head was shaking back and forth, and he was trying to shake that rooster tail out of his mouth. Now, my line wasn't tied on it anymore, but that, just seeing that vision of that big brown trout trying to shake that rooster tail out of his mouth that was no longer on my line was like a nightmare to me. And I relive it.
Do you still see it?
All the time. I relive it. That's the fish that I remember.
See, listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm kind of sad because I was getting ready to. I was imagining, you were gonna talk about the biggest trout you'd ever caught. And you got away.
It got away, but I've had a lot of memories I've had a lot of good fish, but if you ask me which one sticks out in my mind, it sticks out every time I bite that tag end off,
That is interesting too. So in failure, it created some success for you, because from now on you always think about that when you're tying.
That's the exact thing.
That's
and the
awesome.
drag. It's twofold here. But in the seminar, the reason I told that story is because I want like the novice, and there's going to be a lot of high schoolers there.
Right.
I want the novice fishermen and the high schoolers. I've been doing this for a long time, 50 some years. And that's still with me. That happened when I was like 21, 22, and it's still with me.
That's your Moby Dick.
It is.
It's your white whale.
It is. I'm the Captain Ahab of that, So
that's awesome.
yeah, but that was just one of a lot of stories. I mean, talking about stories, we used to go up to Canada a good bit during the Cold War. I don't know why, but we'd go up there, and we would maybe get the chance to mess around with some Russian fighters up there.
Right.
Yeah. So we would go up there every once in a while.
And when you say mess around, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about trying to understand each other's capabilities more than anything.
Okay, just testing each other a little bit.
Yeah. What you're doing is you want to see what that other guy will do. If I do this, what will he do? It's trying to understand the other guy's mentality. So that's something that's about the Cold War that a lot of people don't know is we played around a lot with the Russians, and they played around a lot with us. We did all the time. But it wasn't just playing, it was testing each other's capabilities. So we might have acted like we were playing, but there was a method
there was something to be learned.
Yeah, there was, because we might have to do it for real someday. So, you kind of want to test your opponent and see what he's made of before you have to do it for real. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you're up north, though.
Yeah.
You're messing with Russians.
Yeah, but, that was just a small part of it. I mean, there was fishing.
Yeah, okay, so let's hear about let's hear about the fishing up there.
Well, there's one story that I wrote.
And I could listen to the Russian stuff all day long, but I think somebody's here's going, all right, ask him about a fish.
That's all right. That's all right.
But it's great. You keep on.
Okay, there was one story that I wrote about Canada, and it was one of the first times we were there. I think it was it might have been early October, if I'm not mistaken. But we were going to fish at a lake called Primrose Lake that wasn't too far from this base we were at. We were up by Edmonton, Coal Lake area. There's a big Air Force base in Coal Lake, Canada, and it's outside of Edmonton in Alberta. And so anyway, that's where we used to go, and we'd do training with the Canadian Air Force up there, and we called it training with the Canadian Air Force, but a lot of times we were going up there and maybe trying to provoke the Russians a little bit. I don't know. That was all pilot stuff. I was more interested in the fishing, but anyway, there was a lake that was near there called Primrose Lake, and we wanted to go there, and we wanted to catch some pike and walleye one time. And one thing when we go to these places, well, we'd kind of hook up with the locals, find a local fisherman, try and network with them, maybe get a couple rods, a couple reels, maybe have them take us fishing, something like that. So we hooked up with some of the locals. They told us where we could go to fish from the bank, and they gave us some rods and reels and some spoons, some Red Devil spoons. Were always
Oh, Red Devil. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I've never caught a fish on one of those. I've tried it. I don't think they work down here as good. Maybe it's just me.
No, but up there they worked really good, and especially for pike. But I tell this story. I'll shorten it up a little bit, but I tell this story that. We started out fishing in Alberta, and we were bank fishing. And what we did was we had a Navy van driver drop about 4 of us fishermen off at the lake, and then he was supposed to come back and get us right at dusk. And he dropped us off about noon, 1 o'clock. And we told him, when you come and pick us up right at this spot. We'll meet you at this spot at like maybe 5, 6 o'clock, something like that. So we had that worked out. So we had our ride back. He dumps us off. He goes back to the base, and we start fishing. Well, we wasn't doing any good where we was at. It was kind of like we felt like this wasn't going to work out. So we decided we wanted to walk up the road a piece, and we wanted to see if we could find a better area to fish from the bank. So we start heading up the road, and we get about a mile up the road, and we see this big sign, this big billboard that said, "Welcome to Saskatchewan. You are now leaving Alberta, Canada." So Saskatchewan was the next province over. So anyway, we didn't have fishing licenses for Saskatchewan, but
So it's not one Canadian license fits all, just like Georgia doesn't go with South Carolina. Okay.
state to state kind of thing. Yeah. So
No agreement, interwater agreements or nothing like that up there?
we didn't even know. We just looked at each other and we said, "Are we gonna cross in and try and do this?" And we're all like, "Heck yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right.
Let's go." So off we went. We went on up the road. We walked about a mile up the road, maybe a mile and a half. We finally found this clearing. We get down in this clearing and we start fishing with our spoons, and I think there's like 3 or 4 of us, and we can see out beyond where we cast. We can see fish boiling out there, and it was pike. It was northern pike. And the way these pike would do in this lake is that as the day progressed, they would work their way from out in deeper water up to the shallower water. So we noticed they kept getting closer and closer to us when they were maybe pushing bait or boiling or something. So we waded out to our waist, and we started making long casts, and we started catching pike. And we started catching a lot of pike, and they started getting closer. Before you know it, we had pike swimming around us. I had never, it was this trip, I had never caught a pike. I had caught walleye, but I noticed right away these pike were pretty toothy critters.
Right.
Yeah. And we're in shorts, and we're up to our waist in water, and these things are swimming all around us. Some of them's got hooks in their mouth, and some of them don't. So we realized it'd probably be best if we got out of the water a little ways before we got bit. But we caught a lot of pike. We had a couple stringers, and we loaded up a couple stringers with them. And it got to be where it was getting dark, and we had a lot of pike. We had a couple stringers worth. I think 4 of us had 2 apiece. And we start heading back up the road, and we're walking up the road, and it's getting dark. And we start thinking we're not going to make it back to our checkpoint before dark. And so we start moving a little
Double
quicker.
time.
Yeah, we better step it up a little
Right.
bit. And we start hearing crashing in the woods, and the road that we were on, a dirt road, it was lined with woods. I think it was like not pine trees, but alpines and some other things on both sides of us. And we started hearing something in there, And long story short, it was bears. They could smell. They could smell all those pike. I mean, we probably had 10, 12 pike.
Right.
And so we're carrying them, and it was getting a little nervy because they would stay in the wood line, but they were following us up the road, and they didn't pay any attention to that Saskatchewan,
I was gonna
Alberta
say,
side. They just blew right on through
Right,
that.
absolutely.
So anyway, we made it up the road, and we thought we were going to get attacked by bears. But luckily, as we came up the road and it was just getting dark, we seen lights coming over, headlights over the hill, and it was our van that picked us up and saved us from
Saved you from the
imminent
bears.
bear attack. Yeah.
Now walleye fishing up there compared to say walleye fishing here, because walleye is not very popular in Georgia, but you see if you get caught on the low. I'm just curious. Same techniques that you fish, or even pike, because I think like Lake Seed. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
A little bit. But
Okay, it's
yeah.
got some pike in it.
Yeah.
Would you fish for them the same as you would, here?
I think, but I'm not much of a walleye, and I wasn't up there either, but I'm not much of a walleye guy, but it seems like, maybe on Carter's or something like that, we did a little bit. But yeah, they, same kind of stuff, bottom, grubs. I've caught a lot of them on Lanier over the years, striper fishing, so.
Really, on the bottom like that.
Yeah, that was, as a bass fisherman, I've never caught too many, but as a striper fisherman, it seemed like if you used a live blueback herring and that sucker got half dead and for whatever reason it got down towards the bottom, if there was a walleye around, he was probably going to eat that half dead blueback.
Well, we're gonna bring that back up because I'm curious when we get to Lanier like that. I was just wondering. So, any other grand adventures like that in Navy? Because I can listen to them all night long, fishing stories like that.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch, and there's some that I'm saving that I haven't even. I like to write, by the way. And
We don't want to ruin the book.
No. There's not going to be a book, but there's some that I'm kind of saving for later on when I'm a rainy day. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time down in the Florida Keys. It just seemed like about half my Navy career was down there in the Florida Keys, and there was different reasons for that. For a while, we would help with drug interdiction. That was back in the day, back before they had modern technology and they had, a lot of satellites looking all over our coast. We would do 2 or 3 week stint down in the Keys, and our jets would fly out into the Gulf and, down south, and we'd watch for, say, any kind of unidentified aircraft coming into,
So you're looking for drug smugglers.
Exactly. You had a lot of them back then. You had a lot of cocaine smugglers that come up through Florida. They'd fly low, try and fly under radar. And
Really?
Stuff. Yeah, oh yeah.
So where would they come from? Cuba
They could come from a lot of different Mexico.
Mexico?
Cuba. I mean, a lot of different places. South America. It's hard to say where they were going to come from, but
Right.
they would come.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Now, what time frame are we talking about here? Like
Early '80s.
Early
probably.
80s.
Yeah.
So we're almost to the Miami Vice days.
Yeah, we were in the Miami Vice days. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, I'd spent some time in Miami, and I was wondering if I was going to see Crockett and Tubbs down there.
A lot of these young people listening, like, what are they talking about? They have no idea about the Blazers or whatever like that. So, but you actually lived in that area, that part of that part of history, I guess. The Miami days, kind of like that.
See, after a while, what they did was they have these big, huge radars that look like giant blimps. And you'd see them on these long cables, and they've got them there now in the Keys. And what they do is they're just kind of radars, stationary radars that are pointed to the south out of the Keys, or they might have one pointed over this way. And they're able to monitor any air traffic or even boat traffic. So it kind of made our job, our life a little easier because there was, eyes out there 24/7 where we didn't have to go down there and fly around 24/7.
So you get just for my own wanting to know, you get somebody coming in, what's the protocol? What would you do?
As far as
Like
one of our pilots,
Yeah, like a pilot sees a small plane, or you got some small. What do they do?
Our pilots were Navy. They'd probably call it into the Coast Guard, and then the Coast Guard would take it from there. All we would do is just spot, and then once we would find something, we would get hold of the Coast Guard because that was kind of their job. We were just kind of out there assisting them. So, yeah. But they'd handle it. Coast Guard would handle it.
All right, so I've heard through the grapevine that maybe one famous place that's been a movie has come up in your past. So,
Yeah.
what would that be?
Well, at Top Gun, I mean, I wasn't a part of the movie or anything like that, but I was privy to watching them film.
Oh, you got to watch them film Top Gun.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We well, once again, a lot of the filming was done in the desert, and it wasn't too far from where we trained a lot. So, a lot of times when they were filming the movie Top Gun, we were out in the desert, and it was weird because. It wasn't like now. Now they've got these GoPro cameras mounted to the cockpits of the airplanes.
Trust me, GoPros are everywhere.
Yeah. Well, see, we didn't have GoPros back in the the 80s.
Right.
And when they were filming Top Gun, I think it was like the mid 80s, late 80s, something like that. But I can remember being in the desert there and watching a couple of F-14s come in with giant tripods and cameras on their backs, and to watch an F-14 land, and the runway's like right there on a lot of these bases, and you watch this F-14 come down, and here's this giant tripod that's about it was probably at least 10 feet tall,
right,
with a big camera mounted on the back of a Tomcat flying around. It's like, oh wow.
So that's how they got the aerial footage.
That's how they did it in the 80s.
Back in the days.
Yeah,
like that.
now I'm sure it's the technology. They don't use that archaic giant camera tripod setup. But
I had no idea, to be honest. I've seen the movie 800 times, and I never thought about it being a giant camera on top of the plane.
It was, yeah. It was weird, just look at that. We were all, we worked on Tomcats every day. So, that's... to see that.
That's impressive. So I got one more question about Top Gun because, that's a cult thing. Like, that's a cultural thing for people my age. Other than my wife and them still think the volleyball scene in Top Gun. My wife and all them, it's the volleyball scene. But for me, watching the actual aerial stuff that the planes did, now you got to watch that. So how does somebody making a movie like that, I would imagine the Navy would contract with them. We're going to run these things. I mean, it was scripted.
A lot of it was. Yeah. Okay. And then a lot of it, like the new Top Gun they've got coming out.
Right.
A lot of those scenes that they did in that Top Gun movie was technology where back when the original Top Gun came out in the 80s, it was pretty much just raw fighter footage, that they made. Now they can put all kinds of backgrounds on stuff that they couldn't do back in the 80s. So a lot of the stuff that I seen from the trailer from the new Top Gun, I could look at it and I'd be like, no, that's not real. Don't do that. No.
That's impressive. Yeah, I'm absolutely glad the Grapevine spoke up and for those of you that don't know, the boss kind of said Top Gun. She put that in, so that's awesome. That is totally good. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? Yeah. So okay, let's get into some fishing.
Okay, all right. So let's get back.
If not, it's just going to be a.
I know.
Yeah, but it's great. I could do this. We need to do another one. Just talk about your stories after you write your blogs or books or whatever. And we can come back and talk it all again.
Yeah, man.
All right. So, at what point do we get into Georgia?
This was, I had done most of my Navy, I had done all of my Navy career in fighters and fighter attacks, which is unheard of. You couldn't do that. You couldn't even dream of doing that today. I was special. Back when I was doing it, I was really good at what I did, so I was able to stay in the squadron community, fighter community way longer than I should have. Just to give you an example, they won't let you be in a fighter squadron for any more than 3 or 4 years now, and then they'll send you to shore duty and let you kind of readjust your mental.
Okay, I got you. So there's a reason behind that.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
It's a lot of hard work, but the way we got to Atlanta is I had done my whole Navy career in fighters and fighter attack squadrons. And I had one tour left before I was going to retire at 20 years. And so basically, to put it in layman's terms, the Navy said, Jim, you can go anywhere you want to go. You've earned it. So you've worked more years than you ever should have in fighters. And so you tell us where you want to go and we're going to put you there and you can retire there. So I did a lot of thinking, and I thought, a lot of people had said Atlanta was a pretty good place to, do your duty. I'd never been here, but I knew Lockheed was here too, and I was
Right.
really interested in what I was going to do when I got out of the Navy, you know. And Lockheed came up on my radar. Delta, you know, working on planes down there at the airport for Delta was something else. But that was what kind of brought me to Atlanta, was the fact that Lockheed was here. Everybody said it was good duty. So that was in '97, and so I said, just put me in Atlanta, and I'll just run it out until I retire in 2002 there. So that's what, and they said, okay. So I got here in July of '97. And another reason I came here too, and I knew this before I ever came here, just like any place else, I looked at the fishing
I was getting ready to ask you.
landscape.
I was
here.
going to ask you that.
The first thing that caught my eye was Lake Lanier. So I started doing some research about Lake Lanier. Now, you have to understand, I was coming from Louisiana, and I had lived there for over 4 years, about 5 years, South Louisiana. Now, I've been used to red fishing, and I had a little gig going there where I was kind of guiding down in the marsh in Louisiana. But I thought, you know, it has to be good, and where I'm going, it has to be good. And Lake Lanier had all them stripers. I'd read about the stripers in it, and I thought, you know what? I used to fish for stripers out west a good bit. So I thought, you know, comparing a redfish to another fish, striper is probably about the closest thing that you can compare it to. So that's another reason I came here, is because of Lake Lanier and the striper fishing in Lake Lanier. So
Okay.
that was the decision to come here.
All right. So striper fishing, Lake Lanier.
Yeah.
What was your first taste of it like?
I'll tell you something about this, and you might think I'm crazy. This is probably the first year of striper fishing on Lake Lanier. I didn't catch any stripers, and I used the same techniques I used out west in, say, Lake Mead or somewhere like that had stripers in it. But I used those same techniques here, and I'm Danny. If I'm lying, I'm dying. But I'll tell you this: it was coming up on a year, and I was thinking that striper fishing in Lake Lanier was the biggest hoax they ever pulled on anybody.
Right.
I thought that those stripers hanging up in the wall of Hammonds came from Hartwell or somewhere
Right.
like that.
It's all a mirage.
Yeah, there's no stripers in this lake. You know, I had fished it for, and Lisa was with me too. A lot of times when we fished, and we were just convinced. I was convinced that this was a big hoax. This Hammonds thing, and
Right.
it ain't working out. This blueback thing, you know. So I hadn't caught a striper, and I made some friends with a guy that kept his boat at Lockheed, and he had a center console, and he kind of knew how to striper fish, and I made friends with him, and he told me, he said, Jim, I'm going to take you out and show you everything you
show
need to
you.
know.
All right.
So he showed me how to bait fish. He showed me about U-rigs, how to pull U-rigs, downriggers. You know,
And this is stuff you had never done before.
Never done it. Yeah, I didn't know that a leader had to be, 6-8 feet long. I was tying my leaders like a foot,
Right.
And he showed me all that stuff. And once I got that, once I just had that little bit of foundation to work with, I was able to build on that, It's like so many other things, you get just a little bit of tidbit of something and you can work with it, you can build on it. And that's kind of what I did with the striper fishing.
What was your light bulb moment, though? Oh, I can do this.
My light bulb moment was when I discovered planer boards, and I caught my first big striper on a planer board.
Okay, explain planer board for somebody that's not familiar with that.
Well, a planer board is a small board. They're mainly anywhere from 8 inches to a foot, and it's got a heavier plate on it and a flotation device. The idea of the planer board is to hook your bait to it. Now, guys would run their bait out 40 or 50 feet. They'd run line out after they put their bait on their hook, and about 40 or 50 feet up from their bait, you'd hook this planer board, hook it up to your line, and then you throw the planer board in the water, and you're moving, you're trolling kind of slow. But the planer board actually planes your bait out away from the boat. And that's the whole idea behind the planer board, is to put a bait on, run it out, 30, 40 feet, hook the planer board out, throw the planer board in the water, and let the planer board plane your bait out away from the boat. Because a lot of times these fish, especially stripers, they're boat shy. They see the boat. They know that, boat means maybe bad. I don't want to eat right now.
Right.
So, the idea is to plane the baits out away from the boat to get the bait away from the boat and, a better chance of catching a fish. But guys use these planer boards, 6 and 8 at a time. They'll have a spread of 6, 8, 10 baits out with these planer boards. I actually, in my bait business, I actually made and sold planer boards.
Okay.
Yeah, I had my own brand, and we sold a bunch of them. But when I first started using planer boards, there was only about 2 or 3 manufacturers in the whole United States of planer boards. Now, there were guys local guys that made their own. And so I kind of thought, I can make these, So I've always, growing up on a farm, you're kind of like a little MacGyver,
Right,
So,
you're handy.
yeah, so I was always of a mind that if I looked at something, I'd think, yeah, I can make that better for cheaper, So that was my whole deal was, even going through, fishing in past years, I was always trying to make my own stuff, my own baits, That way it could all be mine, I didn't have to rely on somebody else's. So anyway, I made planer boards and I sold them, and they worked out really well. But I really designed a planer board because a lot of times when we were striper fishing, we used big bait, big 1 to 2 pound trout or skipjacks or something like that. And you needed kind of a tough planer board to handle these bigger baits. So I designed, and my father-in-law, Lisa's dad, helped me a little bit design a planer board. And we made that we made it for big baits and big fish, and so, I designed one and I used that a good bit. And
Okay, and how would the strike be on a planer board? Like once the fish took it, would the planer board affect the fight any, or what would you have to do with that?
No, the planer board, well, a lot of guys, the planer board would totally release from the line and everything, and you'd
Okay.
have to go back and get the planer
Go
board.
pick it up after the fight.
After the fight, you go pick it up. That way you're not fighting any kind of planer board. But the way mine worked is I had a little pigtail swivel on the back of my planer board, and what you did is you hooked your line to that pigtail swivel. So when a fish hit the bait, let's say a striper came up and hit the bait, he's going to hit it and pull on it real hard. Well, the line is also on a clamp. The line's going to pop out of the clamp, but now the only thing holding the planer board onto the line is that pigtail swivel. So the planer board will slide up and down the line.
So it's
back
free.
and forth. It's free. So you're really not fighting the board. You're fighting the fish, but the board's just kind of stationary, floating there the whole time till you get it close to the boat. So, yeah.
All right, so when you first started with the stripers, how did electronics play a role in it compared to, say, today?
Oh, they didn't. Now, when I first started with the stripers, we're talking about 97, 98, and where were we with the electronics then?
Right, it's a little different.
It was a lot. I'm not sure that we even had GPS. If we had GPS, it was probably some handheld pocket, one that you would use for hiking or something.
Right.
That was one of the first GPS I used on Lake Lanier was a handheld GPS that was, like a little handheld garment. But we didn't even have GPS. And, back then, this time of year, you'd have fog, and... GPS on Lanier really wasn't a problem if you knew the lake.
Right.
If you didn't know the lake, you need GPS or you'll get lost. But we had fog and stuff like that on the lake, and you'd be out there on the lake with no GPS. It could be a real problem. I can remember one morning launching in the fog, and I thought I was headed out towards the main lake, and the next thing you know, I'm right back at the ramp. I'm about ready to run right into the ramp.
Right. we experienced some fog earlier this year up at Rocky Mountain PFA that it was like 10 foot, and it was it's disorienting.
Scary, isn't it?
It's a little different. It is a little different.
Yeah.
So at this time, once you figured out, did you start guiding on Lanier for striper?
I did, but I was kind of unique. A lot of striper guys were kind of bait guys, live bait guys. Majority of them still are, or 9/10 of them are. But I used artificials. I made a lot of my artificials. People that follow me way back 10 years ago, I made my own, poured my own lead, my own jigs. I painted them. After I painted them, I tied my own bucktail deer hair, and then I made my own spread my own U-rigs and then put the jigs on the U-rigs. So it was all done from scratch, and I would sell those things. But I was well known for the artificial guy. I could go out there and catch stripers on artificials where a lot of guys were using live bait. So that was a lot of my guiding trips were just based on artificials.
Just based on artificials.
Yeah, either I used downriggers a lot. I used U-rigs a lot. Plus, I made them and lead core. I was known for trolling lead core a good bit back then. I was one of the only guys that trolled lead core.
And for somebody that doesn't know what lead core is, what is
It is lead-filled line. It's the outer casing is made out of Dacron or nylon, and then inside of it, it's hollow, but inside of it is lead. It's a lead line, and basically what that does is the line weighs something, and so if you ran out 100 feet of lead core line, it would sink down and get your baits down to about 10, 15 feet. Now we would run out, say, 200 feet of lead core line, and that lead core was heavy enough to where we trolled with it, and it would get our baits down to, say, 20, 25 feet. So lead core, basically what lead core does is it's just kind of like a downrigger without the downrigger. It's just the weight of the line gets your bait down, and it's something that you troll with at slow speeds.
that you troll with?
Yeah.
Now, compare striper fishing as far as the size of the fish in the 90s, early 2000s compared to now, because I hear it's gone down a little bit in Lanier.
Yes, it has. I kind of watched it grow, peak, and drop. You know,
Right.
In just the time that I have, when I first started striper fishing, you know, we'd catch a lot of teenage fish, you know, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 pounders. You know, they were really, really common. But what else was pretty common was one that was up around 20, 22, 24, 26. You know, you
Right.
could go out there this time of year, you spend a few hours out there, you might be able to get one over 20. It wasn't uncommon, but you could probably pop one over 20. I mean, you might have to have the right kind of bait and be in the right place.
Right.
But back then, like 10, 15 years ago, we caught a lot of fish that were 20s and above, and even high teens. And now you just don't see those. You don't see those, and 30s. You know, we might run up the river, the Hooch or the other river, and you might catch one that's 30, 32, 35, something like that up there in the right, you know, either in the spring or in the fall. Generally in the spring when they'd spawn, they'd go up there, and you could find a 30 plus up there. Today, not so much. I don't even know if you could find a 30 plus up there.
Yeah, why do you reckon that is?
Well, you know, a lot of people they say that it's the gill maggots. You know, they say that.
Okay, I haven't heard that, so let's talk about that. What is it?
Gill maggots. Now, I'm kind of separated from the striper thing, but I still listen to a
Right.
lot and read a lot. But the gill maggots showed up here in Lanier. I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. They might have been here all along. I don't know enough about the gill maggots, but what I do know is a lot of these bigger stripers are susceptible to being killed by the combination of gill maggots and the stress that just summertime puts on them.
Right.
You know, stripers have a real problem with warmer water. You know, they have to have a thermocline. And these deep reservoirs like Lanier, they have a pretty solid thermocline that sets up in the summertime. Those stripers have to stay in there to survive. They can't get outside of that cool water in that thermocline with the oxygen. They can't get out of that and survive. So let's say that summertime, they struggle in the summer. They struggle to find those pockets of good water that they want to stay in. So let's say that, you know, he's having a little trouble finding the good water. It kind of degrades him a little bit. And then you throw on this whole gill maggot thing. They've got, if you open up a big striper's mouth and look inside of it in Lanier, you'll see gill maggots all over the inside.
What is it, like larva or?
I think it is. I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, it sounds like it's some kind of larva or some little, you know, it almost looked like a worm that you'd see in a bass or something sometimes. But anyway, just those gill maggots and the stress of summertime, it pretty much is kind of a death warrant for your larger stripers on the Lanier right now. And I believe that's the reason. Now, some people will say it's because of pressure, you know, and Lanier gets a lot of pressure.
Right.
But I haven't seen pressure enough to where there's no more big stripers. I don't think that there's that kind of pressure on Lanier by fishermen. It has to do with, the quality of the water and the circumstances.
So
of these
more
two.
environmental factors as opposed to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've transitioned, but I want to ask you one more striper question. Just say somebody who's never caught a striper before wants to go to Lanier and not with a guide, just on their own. I want to catch a striper.
Yeah.
And you could give them one technique or tip. What would you do? It doesn't have to be a huge striper. Just if you want to put a striper in a boat in the next month on Lake Lanier, here's what you do. What would you tell them?
Well, hopefully they've got all the right gear. Now,
Right,
are we
yeah.
assuming that?
We're going to assume they got the right gear. They're not going to Walmart and getting a Zepco 33 and going out there, although that has happened. But, yeah, let's assume that they really want to. That's their bucket list. I want to catch a striper.
Okay, if you wanted to catch a striper on Lanier on any given day, right now in the month of January, I would suggest, if you've got the rods, the reels, and all that, I would suggest that you go out and you get yourself 2 planer boards and a couple dozen bluebacks, and you hook them bluebacks up to them planer boards the right way, the way they're supposed to be hooked up. You go dragging that around Lanier, those 2 planer boards with those 2 bluebacks, it ain't going to take long, and you're going to have your first striper.
You're going to have your first striper.
Yeah, this is prime time for planer boards and down lines, and this is what I used to do. And if I was going out tomorrow, one of the first things I'd do is put some bait on some planer boards and just go to dragging them. So,
All right, so you started off guiding for stripers,
yeah,
but eventually you went back to bass.
yeah,
Or you went to bass.
yeah.
So what caused that?
I think more than anything, the transition to bass was just wanting more of a challenge. I wanted to take something that was totally stripped down and build it from that. And bass fishing for me, that's something that I didn't know anything about. Kind of like the stripers when I got here, But I wanted to learn, I thought it was an opportunity to start something that I didn't know anything about and build it from the ground up just to see what I could do with it. And it's been hard because I have goals and I have things that I'd like to achieve in my bass fishing endeavors, and I found out, there's this is another thing that gets me is I'm sure that there's striper guys, and I probably said it myself, and it really cracks me up. But there's striper guys out there that'll say, that guy, how can he not catch 5 bass? How can you not catch 5 bass? You're out there all day. Can you not catch 5? And I can hear these striper guys saying this because I would say it myself.
Right.
You got to be pretty bad to not catch 5 bass. But you know what?
Oh, trust me, Josh and I do it all the time.
Yeah. And, the reality is it all sounds nice. And 5, that 5 number right there, there's not too much to that 5 number till you pay your money in a tournament.
Absolutely.
And then that 5 number, it gets so much
huge
bigger.
number, especially when you get to 4.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, we just need one more. Well, we needed it for the last 4 hours.
You just can't get it.
I know. Trust me. I know that.
That's one of the first things that I learned making that transition and having the goals to actually compete in a bass tournament and successfully go out there and catch bass is it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've done some hard things. Another thing I talk about, I wanted to bring up just a little bit about it. I don't want to get too far off trail with the bass, but back when I was in the Navy, I was a distance runner. I've always been a runner,
right?
Track and distance and stuff like that. And when I first got to Atlanta in '97, I had some friends. We were all distance runners. We were all marathon runners, and we were pretty good at it. We liked to compete at it. So we decided to build this team, a marathon team, and we decided to compete in the Navy's. It was the Navy, but it was a military-wide marathon competition. They used to have one down in Pensacola, Florida, in February, and then they had one up in Ohio around Dayton, Ohio, at an Air Force base. I think Wright-Patterson, in the summer, in the early summer, in the late summer, in the fall. So we decided that we're going to compete. We're going to try and compete in this stuff, in these elite races that the military puts on, and we would compete against the Air Force, the National Guard, the Marine Corps, the Army, and all the different branches. We would represent the Navy. So we put this team together, and we went down to Pensacola in '97 for the first time to compete. And we really got it handed to us. We really realized that it was going to take a lot of work to compete in this. And so now I'd been running for years and years, and I was a coach, and I also helped coach the Marietta High School cross country team, but I like helping people learn. And one of the biggest things that, we faced was how to get faster, how to be able to, compete and win. That was the main thing
that was the
we
goal.
wanted to do,
Yeah.
was win. And no matter, getting back to the bass thing, no matter if it was running or bass, I tell everybody, in running it was different. But in running, success is always masked by a lot of hard work and determination, and you've got to have both of them to lift that first place trophy. And in running, in order to get faster, you had to do what was called interval training, which is just run as fast as you can for an extended period of time or an extended length. And you would do this like a few times a week, and you do it over and over again. And really what you were doing was you're pushing your body somewhere where your body had never been before. It was the unknown, really.
Right.
But you had to do it. It was a necessary part to get faster, and you had to do it in running. I mean, there was other things like your diet and your gait and, your stride and all that stuff. There was a lot that went into that. But without doing interval training, none of us would have got faster. And it was something that we hated to do. It was
Necessary
uncomfortable.
evil.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable to do that. But in terms of fishing, and I relate a lot of that to fishing too, in order for me to get good at bass fishing, I had to do the uncomfortable stuff. I couldn't rely on dock talk and this guy, hey, would you catch it on and go out there with a worm and do that. I had to do a lot on my own. I had to do things that I really didn't want to do, because I knew they were probably going to bite this, giggly wig over here, but I wanted to use the jiggly wig over here.
Right.
A primary example of that is, I don't use the jig enough. I don't throw a jig enough. I don't. And another fact is that I don't win very many tournaments. And there's a parallel there.
I'm terrible at a jig too. I know where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? I mean,
I have zero confidence in it.
Exactly, but you got to do, like in running, it's a necessary evil. You got to do that stuff in order to get better,
Right.
And I wrote an article, How I've Gotten Better at Fishing. And in the article that I wrote about how I got better at fishing, I used my running as, and the necessary evil and all that, and the training as a way to get better. And just to finish up my story about running, in 2002, we finally won first place. We had beat out the Kansas National Guard, I believe it was. And they had owned this competition for years. I don't know what they do up there in Kansas.
So they were the Kenyans of the...
They were. They're like gazelle,
Yeah,
every one of them was like 6'4" and weighed about 127,
Right.
And they just had stick legs, that just ran. But anyway, we had to get better than those guys, So it took from 97 till 2002 to get there. But... we finally hosted the trophy. First time the Navy had won it in years and years. The captain of the base at Pensacola presented us with this massive trophy. I mean, our names got on it for their display down there. But it took 5 years to get there. But, we did it. And we worked hard. And like I say, it's a lot of hard work and determination that goes into success. And that's... something that I've learned over the years, and it was no different than for bass fishing either.
Right. Well, you can equate it. I don't even like to drive 23 miles or whatever a marathon is.
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
So I'm kind of portly now, so
I know,
running's
I know.
not into my thing. But
I
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd do it today if I hadn't discovered biscuits and gravy.
Oh goodness! Listen, I like to eat.
I do too,
I
man.
mean, I got to get in shape. I'm almost, I'm getting to that age where they start doing the tests and stuff. But I like to eat,
I do too,
So,
boy.
but our very first podcast that we ever did was with a buddy of ours named Shane Dover, who loves fishing the jig.
I remember Shane.
Yeah, well, I think it's something specific to somebody's personality or something like that, because he took me out and I can't do it.
I know.
I don't know why. I cannot do it.
I know. It's weird, isn't it?
And he sits there and he just takes his time, and you got to be slow and methodical, I think, too. Mm-hmm. I don't have that kind of patience. I don't have that kind of time either. My wife only lets me fish every so often, so I need to get a bite now. But but the jig fishing is a good example of that. Just you love it, or you got to learn to love it.
Yeah, and the thing about the jig that I've come to learn is the guys that do well on this lake, they know how to fish that jig. It's in their arsenal. And see, I'm not that guy yet, with the jig. And, maybe I'm saving it, maybe.
Yeah, it's your final hurrah.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Well, what guy are you?
Well, right now and this is another thing. This guy changes. This guy will change. Like right now, I'm the crankbait guy. But when it gets to be like maybe late March, early April, I'll go from crankbait guy to the chatterbait guy, and then it'll go from there to the fluke guy. And,
right.
I don't know.
Well, let's talk about right now though with the crankbait.
Yeah.
So what are you looking to do right now with yours?
Well, here's the thing with the crankbait right now, and it's going to be like this from now until March, April, probably, until we get through the bulk of the spawn. But from right now on through the spawn, the crankbait works on Lanier. And one of the main reasons the crankbait works on Lanier is because of our population of Chattahoochee crawfish that we have on the lake. These Chattahoochee crawfish, they love rocks. That's where they spend all their time at. They spend 24/7, 365 on the rocks. When it gets to be cold like this, when the water gets down into the 50s, the lower 50s, and getting into the upper 40s, these crawfish, they spawn, and then they'll molt, and then they'll go back in their holes. But these crawfish will spawn sometimes up to 8 times a year.
Really?
Yeah. That's what people think, that, man, they only spawn like once or twice, but no, Chattahoochee crawfish will spawn several times a year. He has the ability to spawn several times a year, up to 8 or something like that, from what I understand. But this time of year is when they're really, really active. They're out there. They're on the rocks dancing, trying to find a partner and spawn out, and there's just tons of them on the lake. Now, here's what's weird. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Is right now on the lake, you've got bait galore in the ditches. I mean, if you went to a ditch at a creek, pull back into a pocket, and let's say it was 50 feet deep in the center of the pocket, that pocket would probably be just loaded with bait. I'm talking millions of little threadfin shad down there in that ditch. A little bit warmer down there in that ditch, and that's why those shad are down there. Just 1 degree makes all the difference to those. So they're down there in that ditch where it's just a little bit warmer because of the bottom and the ground's a little bit warmer down there. So they're down there by the millions, and you would think that every fish on Lanier would be down there eating all those millions of shad. That's just, all these fish have to do is just open their mouth and swim through it, and they've got a whole meal right there, right?
Right.
But they don't do that. There's a certain population of fish that turn that down, and they go up on them rocks and they eat crawfish. They like crawfish.
Now, is it
better.
more spots than largemouth? Is it more spots than largemouth?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's almost all spots.
All spots.
Not all spots, but I mean, there's a lot of largemouth around. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
This lake isn't depleted of largemouth. Believe me, I live on the lake and I see them all the time right down there at my dock. So I know they're
really.
There. Oh yeah.
Because everybody thinks Lanier, spotted bass, largemouth, trash fish.
I not to get off the subject, but I like the largemouth because they're different than the spotted bass in terms terms of their nature. I mean, I can walk down to my dock and walk out on my gangway, and I can look down, and if there's a spot there, as soon as he sees me, he's gone. He's headed out. He sees a person, he's gone. They're really, really skittish. But a largemouth is just the total polar opposite. A largemouth will probably sit there and look at you. He might swim around in a big circle and come back and look at you again. And they're just weird. They're real curious fish when it comes to that. And I've watched largemouth do this down at my dock. They're not as spooky as a spotted bass is,
Really?
but they're there. They believe me, we've seen some big ones down there too. So there still are largemouth in Lanier for those that think that they're about all gone. I don't think they're about all gone. I think that we're getting better at targeting them now than we used to be. I see a lot more largemouth caught now than I used to see, but a lot of that is because we're targeting. We're using that bait that a largemouth will eat more. Say an Alabama rig. A largemouth will eat an Alabama rig. You know, he might not eat a lot of baits that a spot will eat, but he will eat an Alabama rig. So during this time of year, guys will throw Alabama rigs and catch largemouth, and it's like, because largemouth like Alabama rigs. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Now your crankbaits, are you using a crawfish pattern, or
yeah,
specifically?
that's kind of what I was getting at. I kind of got off track.
That's
here.
all right. I do it all the time. I have to. You're talking, and I'm over here going, man, you should ask that question.
Well, the main thing with the crankbait is the crawfish. And I've written articles about this too, but even more so than that, this time of year when the water's cold, I really, really preach to everybody that if you're going to fish a crankbait, throw that sucker up on the northern banks that are facing the south. Like if you found a rocky point that faced the southwest, definitely fish it if the sun's out, because the sun's been shining on that point all day and it's been warming up those rocks. But when when the sun warms up the rocks, the crawfish come out. They come out of their holes and they start doing their thing. And the bass know this, and the bass come up there too. It's like maybe last week, maybe a week ago, I caught a spot that was over 5 pounds. And as I was getting ready to net him, I was getting ready to put the net underneath him. This dude harked up crawfish. I mean, he must have.
Right.
Yeah.
He was full.
He was full, you know. It was almost like we were back in New Orleans. There were so many crawfish. But anyway, he harked up a bunch of crawfish. And I think about this a lot. You know, they could be down there eating millions of shad. They could just fill their bellies till they couldn't hold another shad. But these bass are up here chasing these crawfish. And there's a couple things that I noticed too is when you catch them up on the rocks like that, they're a lot more colorful. When you catch them in the deeper water, they're pale and cold, and they don't have a lot of color to them. And a spotted bass is a pretty bass. But when you catch them up on them rocks in the wintertime, they've been up there sunning. And when they sun, why their skin changes. It gets a lot of their good color back. But getting back to the crankbaits, the crankbait thing is something that I've kind of worked to perfect on Lanier for a lot of years. Now, I do something different than everybody else. I do finesse cranking.
Okay, so what is that? Because I've heard that.
Well, for me, finesse cranking is using a spinning reel. It's using light line, light gear, and, you can use a smaller crank. I wouldn't suggest using a bigger crankbait with finesse tackle, but just to give you an example, I'd use like a medium-heavy 7.2 spinning rod with a fast-action tip, 8-pound fluorocarbon test, and maybe a DT6 crankbait or something like that in an orange or red pattern now.
How deep of water are we talking that you're targeting?
Well, I mean, if you're pulling up to a rocky point or something like that, you can throw it right up to the bank and bring it on back down the rocks. You just beat it all around the point, just move around the point and throw it in all different directions.
Are you keeping contact with the bottom? You're
this
digging
time
it down?
of year,
Okay,
yeah. This time of year, since you're imitating a crawfish, you want to keep it in contact with the bottom for as long as you can. But the benefit of using, like, say, 8-pound fluorocarbon is that lighter line. Your crankbait's going to get down quicker, and it's going to go down a little bit further with that lighter line. So that's one part of the finesse deal. And also, if you watch my YouTube videos, you'll also see when I'm working this crankbait with a spinning reel, I'm kind of pumping it. I'm treating it more like a jerk bait than a crankbait because I'm real big on visualizing things. And the way I look at it is I'm going to get that crankbait down to the bottom just as quick as I can. And I want to keep it down there once I get it down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive it, what I call driving it down to the bottom. Just pull hard on it as soon as you cast, you know. You want to pull hard on it, get it down there real quick. Once you find the bottom, you can kind of slow it up a little bit. You don't have to pull in. Once you find the bottom, you can kind of pick the bottom with it. So what I do in terms of my gear is I lower my rod tip down to the water and I start pumping it, cranking, pumping, cranking, pumping. And what that does is, if you were to close your eyes and look, you could almost see that crankbait just pecking its way along the bottom, because that's what I want to do. I kind of want to make it dig in, and then, you know, a lot of your crankbaits, they float. They're either balsa or they're full of air, but when you give it a little bit of slack, it's going to back off. So what I want it to do is I want to dig it in, you know, kick up a little bit of mud, maybe back it off a little bit, and then dig it in and kick up a little mud. But you want to put that action on it. You want to give that thing action. It's been my experience over the years, if you don't do that with a crankbait, if you don't kick up that action and get it rattling, banging, and doing all this,
Right.
you're really not going to cause a fish to react to it. A lot of the times, these fish need something different, like a little deflection or just something a little bit different to
Just
set
something to
them
trigger.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
set them off, kind of like a cat would do, you know. But that's kind of the way these bass are. I've caught a lot of fish. Sometimes I'd get it stuck on something or something. I'd pop it a couple times, maybe to try and get it unstuck or something like that. And when it came loose, that's when I'd get the fish. And when it came loose, it'd be backing up. When I came loose, it'd be backing up. And that was the reaction that triggered the fish, was just that change.
Just that change in the pattern or something like that.
Yeah. So when I work my crankbait with the spinning reel, pumping it like that and giving it that action, it's almost natural that it's got some crazy stuff going on, and these fish see this, these bass see it, and they react to it. So, you know, and just to kind of solidify that just a little bit, I've taken a lot of people out and just turned them loose on a crankbait and watched how they did. And I would be catching fish from the front, left, and right, and just watching back at the back, and they would cast it out and just start reeling it, you know, and they would
Right.
just a steady retrieve. They might, you know, I'd get the bottom with it, you know, and dig it in the bottom and just steady retrieve and stuff like that, and they just don't catch anything, and they don't catch anything because there's nothing to trigger a reaction from the fish. So that's what I'm big about, is being able to create a strike by the way I, you know, cast and retrieve.
Okay.
So,
You mentioned chatterbait.
yeah.
Real quick, anything about the chatterbait as far as technique that you like to use that can help somebody? That's a bait that's either hot, you know, it's almost like a jig. You know what to do with it, or you look like a fool throwing it. I mean, trust me, I've the latter I've done. So
Yeah. Well, there's two different ways that I use the chatterbait, and it kind of depends on the time of year. See, when we get closer to the shad spawn, a lot of the baits that you use, you can just cast it out there with a slow retrieve, no funky action or anything, and it works just fine. But with the chatterbait in cold weather, when you're still in March or something like that, what you want to do with the chatterbait is kind of like a jerk bait. You want to pull it, make that blade flutter a lot of vibration, and then kill it. You know, in March, a lot of these fish are still cold, and they ain't wanting to chase anything for any distance. Their metabolism is slowed down, and they just don't have the gumption to get out there and chase something. So when you work that chatterbait, when you pull it and kill it, when you kill it, that's when that fish will react, is whenever you kill it. They don't want to chase it when it's moving. They wait till it stops. It's the same thing with a jerk bait in the wintertime. You know, most of the strikes you get on your jerk bait in the wintertime is when it's just stationary.
right.
You know, I've used a jerk bait in the wintertime in February, jerked it 3 times, set it down and ate a sandwich, and then come back and, you know, jerked it again. That's
Right. How slow you. Yeah, I got you.
you know, you're waiting on that bite. But it's the same thing. And these fish, you know, their metabolism slows down. They get a lot slower. So I don't want to chase stuff a long ways. So that's why a lot of your baits in March, you want to stop, pause it, whether it's a jerkbait, a chatterbait, or a crankbait, or
Right.
whatever it is. It's the stopping action that gets them going. It's not the chasing action, because really when they're cold like that and their metabolism is slowed down, they can't get their body to move. They can't get that tail to swipe the way they, because
Right.
it's just like us if we were cold. We
well,
couldn't move.
I'm year round. Like that. I am a jerkbait year round. I said that, so trust me. Now, not in conclusion, but to wrap a lot of this up, you've mentioned several times that you like to write in your videos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got a YouTube channel, I imagine.
Yeah.
Is that what you put it on? So tell everybody what that is.
My YouTube channel, it's actually JFarm44, but you can if you just type in Jim Farmer Fishing in any
Okay.
search engine, you're going to find the YouTube channel, you're going to find the blog, you're going to find all this stuff. But my YouTube page, if you just type in Jim Farmer
Farmer.
Fishing, yeah.
And they've got plenty of videos.
I've got like 350, 60, 70
covering the
now.
whole spectrum of the type of fishing that you've done.
All kinds of different, striper fishing. We've even been, Lisa and I, we travel and we go to different lakes, and there's a lot of different lakes on there. There's a lot of bass stuff on there. There's just a ton of them stretching back about 10 years now.
Now, are these informative, like you're talking in them? And
Some of them are. Some of them are bad. Some of them are
Well, I understand that, but that's subjective,
Yeah.
what bad is. So, your blog though, you mentioned several times you like to write.
Yeah,
So-
I do, and I'm going to do more of that in the coming years. I've still got a lot of stories that are in my head that I want to get out and put down before they disappear. Some of them have already, but I still know a lot of them. But I really enjoy writing, and the blog. Before I had my big website and Castaway Baits and all that, Castaway Bait and Tackle, I had a little blog, and I really enjoyed it because I could do my little fishing report on there. If I felt like writing some experience that I had or some story or something like that, I could throw it on the blog. But that's called Castaway Blog, www.castawayblog.com. And I haven't been on there for a while, but now that it's the new year and I don't have the baits anymore, why, I'm going to do a lot more writing on my blog.
And you don't have the baits anymore. Why?
I turned 60 this year, and I've decided that I'm going to pursue something maybe a little bit different. Now, I don't know what that is yet, but I've been doing tackle for a lot of years, and I went real strong with it, and it's just for the time being, it's kind of lost its luster. I'm feeling like I'm getting older, and there's other things. I have a golf game that I'd like to improve on, and I'd like to, improve on my riding, and there's other things I want to do too. So,
And that's one of the reasons that I have purposefully not mentioned Castaway Baits, because I didn't want it to overshadow, to me, the interesting stuff that we've heard tonight. The stories and all, that's far more interesting to me. So,
Right.
But for those that don't know what Castaway was, just real quick, kind of give them a little synopsis of, what did you make when you were the types of baits that you were making?
I started out with Castaway Bait and Tackle, and this is going back, I don't know, maybe 10 years, something like that. Maybe
Right.
more, I don't know. But I just started out with planer boards, and the reason why I started selling them is because I made a lot of them and people liked them. I was a member of a striper club and had a lot of friends. But it started out as planer boards, and then I started thinking, I really like to make some jigs, and nobody made bucktail jigs, hair jigs,
Right.
bucktail jigs. And so I started, I got the molds, I bought the lead pot. I got a commercial lead pot. I got 50, 60 molds, and I just started pouring my own jigs and spoons and all that stuff, and watched videos and learned how to tie deer hair jigs. And there was, not that I wanted to, compete with the Captain Max of the world or anything like that, but there wasn't very many of us out there at the
Right.
time. And it was something unique. And plus, here's the big part about it. I felt like I was, if I made my own baits, I wouldn't be down at the bait store buying Hammonds and sending their kids to school when I could probably do it in my own shop.
I understand that completely. I got you.
So it was fun.
Right.
I enjoyed, and to be honest with you, there's a lot to be said for going in and making a bait and taking it out to the lake and catching a fish.
Absolutely.
Something that you've made yourself.
Absolutely. And that's probably from that Kansas upbringing.
It was that MacGyver, that Kansas MacGyver stuff.
Well, I tell you what, here's what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
I'd like to go ahead and put in my calendar book a year from now. Mm-hmm. Because officially now you are retired. Is that a good word?
You could say that. Yeah.
We're going. So a year from now, to see how it's treated you, I'd like for you to come back, and then maybe in that time you've written, some of the other stories that we can come back and we can rehash.
We could do that
because that's a podcast in and of itself. Your naval career and stuff like that, and the stories that you got like that. So, anything else you want to add before I,
No, I think more than anything, I really enjoy. I don't get to do it that often because there's not a lot of people that want to hear about, the Navy and all that stuff. But, to me, it's really important. And one reason that people don't think about, but this is the important part to me, is basically we're all taxpayers. We all paid for this, and I've got 20 years of, your tax money that paid for my career, basically. So, I think it's good that people know where their tax money was spent and a little bit about how it was spent. And I'd really like to expand on that a little bit in my blog in the coming, because I'd really like people to understand, what goes on out there in the military and what they're getting for their money,
Right.
So.
Well, no, absolutely. And one of the reasons that Josh and I created Fish North Georgia was there's a story behind. We could do a fishing podcast or make fishing videos. There's a million of them out there. How to throw this and how to throw, but the why somebody does what they do or what drives them is, to me, far more interesting. And you don't hear enough of it. So I have absolutely, trust me, I could sit here and listen to you talk for another 3 or 4 hours. I don't know if the boss will let you stay that long. So I don't want to wear my welcome out. But okay. I really would like to go ahead and invite you already, 9 months, 12 months down. I can go ahead and put you down as a guest, and we're going to revisit it and do it all over again.
We'll tell some more stories, too.
Man, I tell you what, I love it. I appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks, bud.
You bet. You bet. Thank you, Dan.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Fish North Georgia podcast. If y'all have any topics or guests you'd like to see in the future, leave it in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, click that bell, so that you'll be notified of any future videos. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram at Fish North Georgia. And we look forward to seeing you soon.